Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've ever tried picking up a new language or even just watched a friend completely struggle through it, you know exactly how daunting those first few steps can be. Well, today we are unpacking a really practical framework called the Situational English Blueprint. This methodology is specifically designed to completely flip how beginners acquire basic skills, essentially replacing all that early frustration with immediate usable fluency. We're going to see exactly how it cuts through the traditional academic noise and gets right down to what actually matters for someone starting totally from scratch.
So let's dive right in. Why is it that so many people get completely overwhelmed and just stall out when they first try to learn a language? Usually, the absolute first thing a new learner is handed is a dense, heavy textbook just packed with verb conjugations and abstract mechanics. But think about the reality for, say, an adult immigrant or a traveling professional. They urgently need to know how to order a coffee, how to catch a bus, or just ask for directions. Instead of getting that practical help, they're stuck memorizing grammar rules that feel totally disconnected from their actual life. It's not just demotivating, it's completely backward. And it's the exact reason so many adults throw in the towel before they even really get going. The gap between what they desperately need and what they are actually taught is just way too wide. But our source material highlights a massive light bulb moment to bridge that exact gap. Successful teaching has to be anchored entirely in practical real-life situations. Think about it like building a house. You wouldn't start by handing someone incredibly complex architectural schematics of the internal plumbing, right? No. You show them the actual rooms they need to live in, the kitchen, the bedroom. Language is literally the exact same thing. By teaching the situation first, the room the learner needs to operate in, the grammar just naturally follows along. When you contextualize the words, all those abstract rules suddenly make total practical sense. It completely changes the dynamic. To pull this off, the source systematically breaks the language acquisition process down into a super efficient 7-step engine. This isn't just aimless studying. This is the precise anatomy of an 8 to 15-minute learning session. In just that tiny window of time, this structured framework grabs the student's attention and takes them all the way to independently speaking the language. It flows logically from a hook, straight into vocabulary, then real dialogue, a clear explanation, practice time, a quick quiz, and finally a homework challenge. Let's actually look at how this anatomy plays out in action and why it's so incredibly effective for our brains. Every single effective session in this system kicks off with a really sharp, highly practical goal, like confidently introducing yourself. This immediately answers the learner's biggest internal question: why on earth do I care about this? By putting a concrete, real-world objective right up front, you instantly eliminate that dreaded feeling of just learning to pass some arbitrary test. The learner recognizes the utility right away. They know that in 10 minutes, they're going to have a tool they can literally take out into the world, shake someone's hand, and use that very same day. And that leads brilliantly into real-life dialogue. Instead of conjugating the verb to be 50 times on a whiteboard, learners see isolated vocabulary words like name, country, or job, spring to life in a natural conversation. It gives them an immediate template they can mimic. You're just watching two people interact naturally, which drastically lowers the affective filter, that psychological wall of anxiety that blocks learning. The student isn't dissecting sentence structure, they're just watching human communication happen, and they can instantly picture themselves borrowing that exact template for their own life. Let's actually take a quick beat and think about an A1 level quiz from the source. When you are an absolute beginner, just distinguishing between I from Nepal and I am from Nepal is a huge milestone. Testing this right in the middle of the learning process forces active recall. It literally wakes the brain up. Instead of just passively zoning out to a video, the learner has to reach into their working memory and pull out the correct answer. It fundamentally proves to them that they're making tangible progress. And getting that quick validation, it isn't just about scoring an A+, it's a profound psychological quick win. It's a rush of dopamine. That tight loop of practice and instant validation builds an incredible amount of confidence right before the learner tackles their final challenge. They get immediate feedback that they're doing it right, and neurologically speaking, that exact feeling of reward is what makes new information super sticky for long-term memory. Okay, let's see how this methodology scales when we apply it to something universal, like daily routines. We start with the essential foundational action words: waking up, brushing teeth, eating breakfast, going to work. These are the absolute basics of existing as a human. But the absolute genius of this approach is that it never, ever abandons the learner with just a disconnected, intimidating list of verbs to memorize. A list is abstract. A list is easily forgotten. Instead, it drops those words immediately into a working context. It stitches those isolated words right into a simple, highly relatable mini narrative. The learner isn't agonizing over syntax, they are simply listening to a guy named James describe his morning. He wakes up at 6, brushes his teeth, eats his breakfast. Our brains are biologically hardwired to remember stories over lists, which makes this simple narrative incredibly functional for memory retention. It just feels like a story you'd hear from a coworker, automatically anchoring the language in recognizable reality.
But here is the crucial transition from listening to doing. By defining an exact practice prompt, the learner shifts from being a passive listener of James's story to an active participant in their own. They literally fill in the blank with their own reality. What time do they wake up? This step of personalization is absolutely vital. It's exactly what moves the new language out of short-term working memory and locks it straight into long-term retention. When the information becomes about you, your brain decides, okay, this is important enough to keep. Moving up to the A2 level, the focus pivots purely to real-world survival. Think about navigating a 10-pound purchase at a shop or buying a $2.50 bus ticket from a driver. For a native speaker, these are totally trivial moments. But for a newcomer in an English-speaking country, these are high-stress, intimidating micro-interactions that can literally make or break their entire day. Failing to buy a bus ticket might mean missing an incredibly important appointment. The stakes are very real, so the curriculum directly targets these specific anxiety points. So instead of handing students an endless, overwhelming dictionary, the curriculum acts like a surgical tool. It isolates the exact, high-utility phrases you need at the cash register or the bus stop. Let's be real. When there is a queue of impatient people standing right behind you at a shop, you do not need to mentally search for the future continuous tense. You just need to know how to ask the price and hand over your debit card without panicking. It's about equipping the learner with functional armor for the real world and stripping away all the linguistic fluff that doesn't actually help them survive. This method even scales all the way up to incredibly high-stakes environments, like a job interview. It teaches candidates exactly how to express that they are hardworking or that they enjoy learning new skills. It helps them navigate standard, stressful hurdles like, tell me about yourself. At this point, the language instruction practically transforms into actionable career coaching. It's no longer just teaching English, it's giving people the specific scripts that could help them land a job, secure their livelihood, and literally build a new life. That is the incredible power of a purely situational approach. Why does this hit home so hard? Because it fundamentally respects the learner's time and reality. Immigrants, busy students, job seekers, they do not have the luxury of spending years mastering conversational theory in a classroom. They need immediate, life-improving utility today. They need to talk to doctors, managers, and shopkeepers right now. By focusing purely on scenarios like a hospital visit or workplace safety, this method delivers an immediate return on investment for every single minute they spend studying. When we zoom out and look at the whole picture, we see a comprehensive 10-part syllabus. But it isn't just a random assortment of lessons. It's a massive, highly practical toolkit. Ranging from basic introductions all the way to complex workplace communication, it equips the learner step by step with the precise, real-world scripts they need. It's a complete roadmap from day one of arrival to full functional independence, absolutely proving that structure combined with contextual relevance is the ultimate accelerator for adult learning. So this really leaves us with one big provocative thought. Seeing just how effectively this context-driven approach works for absolute beginners, how might you use it yourself? The next time you need to master a new language or, honestly, any complex skill, try abandoning the abstract drills. Build your own scenarios, figure out the critical survival phrases, and just see how incredibly fast you learn when the information actually matters to your daily life. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.